How do you assess Christine Quinn as Speaker of the City Council?
I like Christine. I mean, she and I have been together in public life for a long time. For me, the term limit thing was a deal breaker, though, I must confess. You jumped from 2005 to today. We were supposed to have an election in between there that I had some eyes on. I think that is when the citizens vote, that creates a scaffolding, a foundation on which everything else that government does rests, good and bad. When citizens decide something in a referendum, that scaffolding exists. When you decide, to heck with it, I'm going to get rid of the voice of the people. I don't care what they think. I've got a better idea. I think it's so important that I continue to serve or the mayor continues to serve. To me, it undermines the very foundation of our government. So on that one issue is kind of like one that stuck in my craw more than others. But overall, I think the people running for mayor are decent people, and they're people with whom I've worked over the years. And I'm not going to get into the race because I out of animus towards them. It's going to be because I have a different vision.
I'll give you a little hint, an inside thing. I think my table will agree with me. He knew he was going to he was going to work scaffolding and deal breaker into an answer here. He didn't know what the question was going to be, but somehow, some way, he was going to get it in. And he did that with our own Dominic Carter. Definitely one of the headlines here, taking direct aim at Christine Quinn here. All right, let's bring in an idea of where this race is right now. And for a snapshot on the poll numbers, Andrew, give us an idea where we are, because I think he surprised a lot of people how quickly he moved up the food chain, at least in the latest poll, albeit with a lot of built-in negatives.
And there have only been 2 polls since he's even floated a potential comeback, Rich. Weiner has yet to formally declare himself a candidate, and there are at least a few folks hoping he doesn't run, like perhaps all the other candidates. Without Weiner in the race, Council Speaker Christine Quinn has the lead with all the other Democrats in a fight for second. But when you add Weiner to the mix, Quinn's lead diminishes, and everybody else winds up fighting for third. Though it's not all rosy poll numbers for possible candidate Weiner, he's got by far the highest negative numbers of any single candidate, with 50% of Democrats and 52% of all New Yorkers saying they would never consider voting for Weiner, at least not yet. Rich?
All right, Andrew, thank you. I want to bring in the rest of our panel on this. Scott Levinson, Democratic political consultant, president of the Advance Group, and as we'll get into a second, somebody with a dog in this fight when it comes to mayor. Dominic Carter, you already met here. Brandon Bryce, Republican strategist and columnist for the Washington Times community section. And you get to throw darts at the whole field on this one, Brandon. And Andrew Whitman, who you already met. Okay. Scott, I'll start with you on this one. Just so we got unanimity, you don't do what he did today, and you don't push it back a week because he was going to do it last week, but because of what happened in Boston, unless you're laying the groundwork here for a run. Am I right?
Well, Anthony Weiner's got a lot of money to spend.
More than $4 million.
More than $4 million. People don't usually not spend money that they won't be able to spend if they can. Regardless of what he does, that $4 million will help change his image, increase his positives. Only good comes from him spending money.
There was some debate, though. Maybe he should have run for something else to get the first race out of the way. Public advocate, something on the lower level here. He went top of the heap here as he ran for mayor.
If you know anything about Anthony Weiner, there's not much about him that accepts second seed to anybody. But I hear this literally every day. He will drop down to a lower office. He should drop down. I just don't think that's in the cards.
Dominic, the one question he wouldn't really answer with you was the role of the Clintons. And as everybody knows, Uma Abedin, his wife, was the right-hand person here for Hillary Clinton, not just when she was in Washington as senator, but also in the State Department. Very, very close here. There has been conversation that the Clintons at least played a supporting role to her throughout this process. They wouldn't answer if they played a role at all here in that they'll help him at all in the campaign, did they?
Tried repeatedly. That's the one question that he would not answer. And the question was real simple. Has President Clinton told you you can be elected mayor? But he wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole at all.
Tried. Andrew, when we look at numbers, I think one of the numbers you hit on that's important is negatives. And what that says for people who didn't know is if you're running for office, you want, for those who don't know you, to form a positive opinion on you. If they've already formed an opinion on you, you have a smaller pool to change minds here if you're trailing. That's probably going to be his biggest handicap, right?
It certainly is, and the interview with Dominic and the other interviews that he's doing is one step in helping mitigate some of those negative numbers, but that's not the Anthony Weiner that's going to help get him elected mayor or to whatever office he runs for. It's the Anthony Weiner we saw at the beginning of the show, that clip, that firebrand clip from the floor of Congress. The faster he can get back to that version of Anthony Weiner, the better off his political fate will be.
If you had to put your finger on what you think is going to be the biggest hurdle for him to cross, I know it's the photos, et cetera, but is it that he took him in the first place? Because we have a forgiving lot here, especially in New York when it comes to politicians, right?
Exactly.
Is it that he lied about it, or is it that the other factors? Well, the wife was pregnant at the time here. He tried to blame Republicans for a giant conspiracy. Remember that? What's the thing that he's going to have the hardest time putting this thing, as he said, in the rearview mirror?
I think the biggest hurdle for Anthony Weiner is going to be the women's groups, and I think unfortunately it's looking like it's coming down to the wire between him and Christine Quinn, and so I think if she can mobilize the women's groups in New York City, I think he's got a major issue to focus on. But getting back really quick, I think one of the biggest issues with Weiner is that this is a man who broke the public's trust, and what he's allowed to do, or what he did, was just totally ridiculous, and I'm surprised. I personally think it's too early for Weiner to even consider running for mayor. There was some speculations that he may run for public advocate. He may look at maybe even the Senate seat down the line. I still say it's way too early, and I personally wouldn't do it if I was Weiner.
We talk about Christine Quinn, and one of the things that Dominic got out of him was not only is the congressman not a big fan, obviously, of hers, but he doesn't even know if he could muster a vote for her if she was the general election candidate here, and it got a very swift response, as we've already seen from the Quinn campaign. Now, you yourself are behind an ad right now. In fact, the second ad, let's play it for folks that I'm sure Christine Quinn's not going to put on her website. Let's take a listen.
You don't know when the next emergency is going to hit you or your family. Often, the difference between life and death is measured in minutes or even seconds. After Christine Quinn took thousands of dollars from real estate developers who owned the property, she failed to keep St. Vincent's open, leaving thousands of New Yorkers in need of medical care with nowhere to go. When Christine Quinn allows the things that are most important to New Yorkers to disappear, how can you support her for mayor?
If you remember the hazy smoke one, that was also one of Scott's favorites. Now, first of all, tell people who's behind that spot and why.
There's a committee, New York City is not for sale. There are 3 founding members: Wendy Newell, Arthur Chiliotis, Steve Nislik, Israeli NICLAS, a animal rights organization, that have joined together. They come from 3 separate backgrounds, but they all agree, as seemingly does Anthony Weiner, that anybody but Quinn would be the best person for mayor for New York. It was interesting to watch Anthony be so clearly in our corner, agreeing that any of the candidates would be better than Christine.
Does she have a labor problem?
She has a multitude of problems. I actually disagree with some of the analysis. What you really have to look at, early in the race, a lot of her positive numbers, her big poll numbers, have purely been name recognition. And when you really dig deep, people aren't really sure why they're supporting her. So it's not just interesting to note where she polls today, but it's where she polls today vis-a-vis where she was 3 weeks ago. And we've seen a significant 10-point drop in her support.
Who could beat her? And I say, if you think the Weiner's got baggage, John Liu, I'd argue, certainly. I don't know how he's electable, but
let's quickly walk through it. John Liu has had a shadow over him for a year and a half, but he'll argue after a year and a half, you could indict a ham sandwich with all the wiretapping. You haven't laid a glove on him, so
doesn't matter. This is public opinion, not the
as
court,
you said,
right?
we're a forgiving bunch. If the trials end and nobody's convicted, he's got a capable body of work to present. Bill de Blasio's been elected citywide. Billy Thompson came within 50,000 votes of beating the multi-billionaire Mike Bloomberg. So there are a lot of people who can move in these numbers. So that field is not set.
Don't you think, though, Dom, if there's anyone that's going to beat her at this point, it would be Weiner or it would be Billy Thompson, probably?
Thompson, I would imagine. The problem that Christine Quinn has is that she's the early front runner. And everyone, she's the alliance with Bloomberg, she's never going to get away from that. And so, I mean, people, these are not my words. They have called her the 6th deputy mayor or another deputy mayor under Bloomberg. Her actions, part of what she's done as the leader of the city council requires that you have a working relationship with the mayor. But when the mayor is a billionaire who overturns term limits and you went along with it and every Democrat is sharpening their knife, you got a problem.
Dominic, after today, did Anthony Weiner help himself or hurt himself?
Wow. I think he helps himself, but it's all what's in the future, what's out there.
It is. The problem for Anthony Weiner is what we don't know. That's the biggest threat facing Anthony Weiner.
All right. Reminder again, everybody, part 2 of Dominic's sit down with Anthony Weiner. That's tomorrow night here on RFL at 6 p.m. He's getting into all those issues and more. You can see it both on RNN and Fast One News. Also, you can head to our Facebook page and you can watch the interview. Now, we take a quick break, but when we come back, another big New York issue here, and it's starting to get national attention as well. A lawsuit that lawmakers feared would make the county of Westchester synonymous, easy for me to say, with racism. But now, 4 years after Westchester agreed to settle its housing suit, the problems continue with price tags of millions of dollars. It's a case that may be headed back to court and back to the headlines. Andrew's got more on all of that after this.